The bride was trembling, and Theron Ravencourt could smell her fear from across the cathedral. He sat in the shadows of the uppermost gallery, invisible to the 100 mortal guests gathered below, watching as the veiled woman processed down the aisle toward her groom. The ceremony was a formality, a political alliance between two prominent human families who believed they still held power in this city. They didn't know that Theron owned every building on this block, that his people had claimed this territory 3 centuries ago, that mortal politics were merely puppetry he occasionally found amusing. But this marriage had caught his attention for one reason. The groom's family owed an ancient debt to the Vampire King's court, a debt that would come due tonight. The bride reached the altar, her white gown pristine, her veil obscuring her face. The officiant began his monotonous recitation, and Theron felt his interest waning. He would collect what was owed and return to his estate beneath the city, to the obsidian halls where true power resided. Then the groom lifted the veil, and everything stopped. The woman standing there was not the bride he'd been told to expect. The documents had named Theron Marlowe, the eldest daughter, renowned for her beauty and poise. But this woman was someone else entirely. Her face was rounder, softer, her eyes wider, and filled with barely concealed panic. Dark curls escaped from her carefully pinned hair, and her lips trembled as she stared at the groom. But it was her scent that arrested Theron completely. Fear, yes, but beneath it, something infinitely more compelling, a sweetness that made his ancient blood sing, a warmth that called to the coldest parts of him. In 800 years, he had never encountered anything like it. The groom's face had gone rigid with fury. "What is this?" he hissed, loud enough that the front rows heard. "Where is Eleanor?" The woman, the wrong sister, flinched. "She's gone," she whispered. "She left last night. She didn't want—" "So they sent you instead?" The groom's voice dripped with contempt. "Zara, the spare daughter? Do they think I'm a fool?" Zara Marlowe. The name resonated through Theron like a bell. He leaned forward, his preternatural vision capturing every detail of her face. The flush of humiliation spreading across her cheeks, the way her hands twisted the bouquet until petals fell, the single tear that traced down her face before she blinked it away. "I'm sorry," she said, and there was something in her voice, dignity, despite everything. "My parents thought they hoped you wouldn't notice until after the vows, that you'd honor the agreement regardless of which daughter." The groom laughed, cruel and sharp. "Honor an agreement with a replacement? With the sister everyone knows is worthless? Eleanor was beautiful, accomplished, worthy of my family's name. You're nothing. A failed artist who hides in her studio and embarrasses her parents at every social function." The guests were murmuring now, a rising tide of scandal and shock. Zara stood frozen, her face draining of color. Theron watched her carefully, studying the way she held herself despite the public humiliation, spine straight, chin lifted even as her eyes shone with unshed tears. Then her gaze lifted, sweeping across the cathedral, as if searching for an escape route. And somehow, impossibly, her eyes found his in the shadowed gallery. For one suspended moment their gazes locked. Her eyes widened, and he saw recognition flash through them, not of who he was, but of what he was. Humans with enough sensitivity could sometimes sense the predator in their midst, the ancient death that walked among them. She should have been terrified. Instead, something like hope flickered across her face. Theron stood. The decision crystallized in his mind with perfect clarity, driven by an instinct older than civilization. This woman, this trembling, humiliated, wrong sister, was his. He knew it with the same certainty he knew his own name, with the same bone-deep recognition that had sustained him through 8 centuries of existence. And no one insulted what belonged to the Vampire King. He moved. One moment he was in the gallery, the next he was standing at the altar, supernatural speed leaving afterimages in the air. Gasps erupted throughout the cathedral. The groom stumbled backward, his face going gray. Theron Ravencourt was dressed in black as always, his coat tailored to perfection, his white hair falling past his shoulders like a river of moonlight. His skin was pale as marble, his features sharp and aristocratic, his eyes burning with crimson fire. He didn't bother hiding what he was. Every mortal in this cathedral could feel the power radiating from him, the presence of something infinitely older and more dangerous than they could comprehend. "The wedding is over," he said softly. His voice carried to every corner of the vast space, threading through the air like silk over steel. "The bride will be coming with me." Zara stared up at him, her breath coming in short gasps. Up close, she was even more captivating, her scent wrapped around him like an embrace, and he could hear the rapid thunder of her heartbeat, see the pulse jumping in her throat. Every predatory instinct in him surged forward, demanding he claim her, protect her, take her away from this place and everyone who had dared to hurt her. Who are you?" the groom managed to stammer. Theron didn't bother looking at him. His attention remained fixed on Zara, watching emotions cascade across her expressive face, shock, confusion, and underneath it all, that stubborn flicker of hope. "I am Theron Ravencourt," he said, "and your family's debt to my court has come due. The terms were clear. The bride from this marriage becomes ward of the Vampire King for 1 year. A contract signed by your great-grandfather a century ago. Lies came easily when you'd had 800 years to practice them. In truth, no such debt existed. But these mortals didn't know that, and by the time they researched their family histories, Zara would be far beyond their reach." "That's impossible," the groom said, but his voice shook. He knew the old stories, the whispered warnings about contracts with immortals that could never be broken. Every prominent family in this city had skeletons in their closets, deals made with the creatures who truly ruled the night. "Check your records," Theron suggested, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. He finally turned to face the groom, letting his full attention fall on the mortal man. The groom took another step back, his face draining of what little color remained. "The Marlowe family offered their bloodline as collateral. The bride walks down this aisle, the debt transfers, and I am here to collect." "But she's not. Eliana was supposed to—" The groom was babbling now, his careful composure shattered. "A bride is a bride." Theron held out his hand to Zara without looking away from the groom. "The contract doesn't specify which sister, only that the woman who stands at this altar, beneath this veil, on this date, becomes mine for 1 year." Silence filled the cathedral. Zara's parents stood frozen in the front row, her father red-faced with fury, her mother pale with shock. Zara looked between Theron's outstretched hand and the groom who had just publicly destroyed her, her mind clearly racing. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. Her voice was steadier now, and Theron felt a surge of admiration. She was stronger than anyone had given her credit for. "This debt?" He finally turned to meet her eyes again, and the connection between them sparked like lightning. "Every word," he said, making his tone as gentle as he could. "You are legally mine to claim, Zara Marlowe, and I am here to take you home." She searched his face, and he let her see the truth there, the desire, the possessiveness, the absolute certainty that he would let no harm come to her. He was a monster, yes, but he was a monster who had chosen her, and in this moment, that was infinitely better than the life she'd been about to endure. Zara took his hand. Her touch sent electricity singing through him. Her skin was warm, soft, alive in a way his hadn't been for centuries. He folded his fingers around hers carefully, aware of his own strength, of how easily he could break her. She was so fragile, so human, so perfect. "Wait!" her father pushed forward, his face purple now. "You can't just take my daughter. This is insane. Someone call the police." Theron didn't release Zara's hand. "By all means, call them. Explain how you broke a century-old contract with the Vampire Court. Explain how you sent the wrong daughter to fulfill a marriage alliance, committing fraud against both families. Explain how you violated the Treaty of Shadows that keeps this city safe from my kind." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "I'm certain they'll be fascinated." The threat hung in the air. Every mortal in this room understood now what they were dealing with. The Treaty of Shadows was real, a carefully maintained balance between the human world and the creatures that hunted in it. Breaking that treaty meant war, meant the monsters would stop pretending to be civilized. "Please," Zara's mother said, stepping forward with tears streaming down her face. But whether she was begging for her daughter's safety or for protection from scandal, Theron couldn't tell. "She's just a girl. She doesn't understand." "I understand perfectly," Zara said, her voice cutting through her mother's pleading. There was steel in her tone now, and anger. You dressed me in Eleanor's wedding gown. You told me it was my duty to the family. You said I owed you this after all the disappointment I'd caused. She looked at her parents, and Theron saw the years of hurt shining in her eyes. You were willing to sacrifice me to save face, to preserve an alliance with a man who just called me worthless in front of everyone we know. Her mother flinched. Her father looked away. So yes, Zara continued, her grip tightening on Theron's hand. I'll go with the Vampire King. At least he's honest about what he is. Pride surged through Theron, fierce and hot. This woman, this magnificent creature who'd been dismissed and undervalued her entire life, was choosing him. Choosing the monster over the mortals who should have protected her. He pulled her closer, wrapping his other arm around her waist. Hold on, he murmured against her ear, and felt her shiver at his proximity. What? He moved. In the space between heartbeats, he carried her up the aisle, through the massive cathedral doors, and into the night. Behind them, chaos erupted, shouting, crying, the sound of witnesses to something they would never be able to explain. Theron ignored it all. His only focus was the woman in his arms, her wedding dress billowing around them like wings as he ran faster than human eyes could follow. The city blurred past them. Theron navigated by instinct, taking them through streets and alleys, over rooftops and through parks until the sounds of the cathedral faded into memory. Zara had buried her face against his chest, her arms locked around his neck, her heart hammering so hard he could feel it against his own still one. Finally, he slowed, stopping in a cobblestone square far from the wedding venue. Old brownstones surrounded them, their windows dark, the area quiet and peaceful. A fountain burbled in the center, and gas lamps cast warm pools of light that pushed back the shadows. Theron set Zara down carefully, keeping his hands on her waist until he was sure she was steady. She swayed slightly, her face flushed, her breathing ragged. But she didn't pull away from him. Instead, she looked up with wide eyes, taking in his features properly for the first time. You're really a vampire, she whispered. I am. The Vampire King. Yes. She absorbed this, her expressive face showing every emotion as she processed what had just happened. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. It was a slightly hysterical sound, but genuine. This is insane. This is completely insane. I was just rescued from my sister's wedding by a vampire who claims I'm his property now because of a century-old debt. She pressed her hands to her face, her laughter bordering on tears. My parents are going to lose their minds. Eleanor is going to be furious she missed this, and I don't even care. Theron felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Warmth, perhaps. Amusement. You're taking this rather well. Am I? She lowered her hands and her eyes were bright with emotions he couldn't name. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Scream? Faint? Beg you to let me go? She shook her head. That man was going to be my husband. My parents knew what he was like, how cold, how cruel. They knew, and they didn't care. Eleanor was smart enough to run. I should have run too. Why didn't you? The question came out softer than he intended. Zara looked away, her fingers twisting in the elaborate fabric of her dress. In the lamplight, she looked like something from a painting, a bride stolen away by dark forces, trembling on the edge between two worlds. Because I'm the good daughter, she said bitterly. The one who stays, the one who tries to make everyone happy even when they're never satisfied. Eleanor is brilliant and beautiful, and she's never cared what anyone thinks. She pursues what she wants, and damn the consequences. I've spent my whole life trying to be worth loving, and all I've done is make myself small. The pain in her voice cut through Theron like silver. He moved closer, using one finger to tilt her chin up until she had to meet his eyes. You are not small, he said fiercely. I have walked this earth for 8 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall, watched mortals achieve greatness and commit atrocities. And I have never encountered anyone with a presence like yours. You called to me across that cathedral like a flame in the darkness. Do you understand? The moment that veil lifted, I knew. You were meant to be mine. Zara's breath caught. You're not just claiming me because of a debt, are you? There is no debt. The confession came easily. I invented it to take you from that place, from those people who never deserved you. She should have been angry, should have been terrified. Instead, wonder spread across her face. Why? Because you're mine, he repeated, letting her see the possession in his eyes, the absolute certainty. Because every instinct I have is screaming at me to protect you, to keep you safe, to make sure no one ever hurts you again. Because in 800 years I have never felt anything like what I felt when our eyes met. That's impossible, she whispered. We don't even know each other. Don't we? He traced his thumb along her jawline, mesmerized by the softness of her skin, the warmth that radiated from her. I know you're an artist. I know your family doesn't appreciate your talent. I know you've spent your life making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. I know you're brave enough to take a vampire's hand in front of a cathedral full of witnesses. And I know... He leaned closer until his lips were almost brushing hers. That you're not afraid of me. You should be, but you're not. Maybe I'm just stupid, Zara said, but there was no real fear in her voice. Her pulse had quickened, but not with terror, with something else, something that made his blood sing. You're not stupid. You're extraordinary. He pulled back slightly, giving her space to breathe, to think. I'm offering you a choice, Zara Marlowe. Come with me to my home. Let me show you what your life could be away from those who diminished you. 1 year, as I claimed in that cathedral. And at the end of that year, if you wish to leave, I'll let you go with enough money to start over anywhere in the world. And if I say no, then I'll take you anywhere you want to go right now, set you up with resources and protection, make sure your family can never manipulate you again. He meant every word, even though the thought of letting her walk away felt like silver, burning through his veins. You are not a prisoner, Zara. You will never be a prisoner. I want you to choose me. She studied his face for a long moment, and he let her look. Let her see the hunger and the hope, the desire and the determination. Let her see that he was a monster who wanted to worship her, a predator who had found something worth protecting. 1 year, she said finally, and you promise I can leave if I want to? You have my word, and a vampire's word is binding. Then show me. She squared her shoulders, and he saw the decision solidify in her eyes, the choice to step into the unknown, to embrace the darkness rather than return to a life that had never valued her. Show me this other world. Show me who you are. Show me why a vampire king would crash a wedding and steal the wrong sister. Theron smiled, and this time it was real, full of predatory satisfaction and something dangerously close to joy. With pleasure. He swept her back into his arms, and she came willingly this time, looping her arms around his neck without hesitation. As he carried her through the night-soaked city, racing toward his home in the depths beneath the streets, Theron Ravencourt acknowledged a truth he'd spent centuries avoiding. He had been alone for so long. Powerful, yes, respected and feared, but utterly, crushingly alone in the way only immortals could be. Every human he'd known had aged and died while he remained unchanged. Every connection had been temporary, constrained by the vast gulf between mortal and vampire. But Zara was different. She had to be. Fate itself had conspired to put her beneath that veil, to bring her to him at exactly the right moment, and he would spend the next year proving to her that she belonged in his world, at his side, for however long she would have him, even if that meant forever. The entrance to Theron's domain was hidden beneath an abandoned subway station in the oldest part of the city. To mortal eyes, it appeared condemned, blocked off with chain-link fences and warning signs. But Theron passed through the barriers as though they were smoke, carrying Zara down crumbling stairs into darkness. She tensed in his arms as the light faded, and he murmured reassurances against her hair. I have you. I won't let you fall. I believe you, she said, and meant it. The stairs ended in a tunnel lined with black stone that gleamed wetly in the faint light. Theron's eyes adjusted instantly, his vampire sight turning the darkness into shades of gray and silver. Zara couldn't see, so she clung tighter, trusting him to guide them through the labyrinth. They passed through 3 more checkpoints, each guarded by vampires who bowed deeply when they saw their king. Theron felt Zara's curiosity building with each encounter, felt the questions forming behind her lips. But she stayed silent, observing everything with an artist's eye despite the darkness. Finally, they emerged into his home. The great hall stretched before them, vast as a cathedral and twice as beautiful. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in shadows punctuated by floating orbs of blue fire that cast everything in ethereal light. Black marble columns supported archways carved with centuries of history, battles won, treaties signed, the entire chronicle of vampire civilization etched in stone. Tapestries hung between the columns, woven with silver thread that caught the firelight and threw it back in patterns that seemed to move and breathe. At the far end, a dais held a throne of obsidian and bone, terrible and magnificent. Around it, the court gathered dozens of vampires dressed in clothes ranging from medieval splendor to modern elegance, all of them pale and beautiful and deadly. They turned as one when Theron entered, their red eyes fixing on the mortal woman in his arms. Theron set Zara on her feet, keeping one possessive hand at her waist. She swayed slightly, overwhelmed by the grandeur and the attention, but she didn't cower. Instead, she lifted her chin and met the stares of the vampire court with remarkable composure. "My people," Theron said, his voice carrying through the hall with the weight of absolute authority. "I present Zara Marlowe. She is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me." The threat was clear. The vampires bowed, acknowledging both their king's claim and his warning. A figure stepped forward from the crowd, a woman who looked barely 20, with white hair braided with silver chains and eyes like rubies. She wore a gown of midnight blue that seemed to absorb light, and her smile was sharp as she studied Zara. "My Lord Ravencourt, this is unexpected. You've never brought a human to court before." "Circumstances have changed, Seraphine." Theron's tone made it clear he would tolerate no challenge. "Zara will be staying with us for a year." Seraphine's eyebrows rose. "A year? How fascinating." She glided closer, moving with the preternatural grace of their kind, and Theron felt Zara tense beside him. "And what does the mortal think of our world?" Zara surprised them both by answering directly. "I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Her voice was steady, tinged with awe. "It's like stepping into a painting, into a dream." Something shifted in Seraphine's expression, surprise perhaps, or approval. "An artist, then? How delightful. We haven't had a mortal artist in court since the Renaissance." She inclined her head gracefully. "I am Seraphine Nightshade, the king's second in command. If you need anything during your stay, you may call on me." It was an offer of friendship, or as close as vampires came to such things. Theron felt some of his tension ease. Seraphine was his oldest ally, and her acceptance of Zara mattered more than he'd realized. "Thank you," Zara said, and managed a small curtsy despite the cumbersome wedding dress. "I appreciate the welcome." Other members of the court began to approach, introducing themselves with varying degrees of curiosity and courtesy. Zara handled each encounter with grace, asking questions about their histories, their roles in the court, their perspectives on the immortal life. Theron watched her win them over one by one, her genuine interest and lack of fear disarming even the most suspicious of his people. She was magnificent. After an hour of presentations, Theron finally led Zara away from the hall. They climbed a spiral staircase carved from living stone, ascending to the private levels where only the king was permitted. Zara's hand remained in his, her palm warm against his cool skin, grounding him in a way nothing had for centuries. His chambers occupied the highest level of the underground estate, a suite of rooms designed for comfort and luxury, decorated with treasures accumulated over 800 years. Theron guided Zara through the sitting room, with its plush velvet furniture and walls lined with ancient books, past the study where he conducted the business of ruling the vampire nation, and into the bedroom itself. The space was dominated by an enormous bed draped in black silk, its posts carved with protective runes. More floating lights drifted near the ceiling, their blue glow casting everything in soft shadows. One wall was entirely taken up by an oil painting of a moonlit forest, so realistic it seemed one could step through the canvas and disappear into the trees. Zara stopped in front of the painting, her artist's eye drinking in every detail. "This is incredible. Who painted it?" "I did. About 300 years ago." Theron moved to stand beside her, studying the work with a critical eye. "I was feeling nostalgic for the forests of my mortal life. Painting helped preserve the memories." She turned to him with wonder in her eyes. You paint? Among other things, immortality requires hobbies or one goes mad. He gestured to a door on the far side of the room. There's a bathroom through there with everything you'll need. I'll have Seraphine bring you proper clothes tomorrow. For tonight. He hesitated, suddenly uncertain in a way he hadn't been for centuries. You should rest. You've had quite an ordeal. Zara looked down at the elaborate wedding dress, its white fabric now dusty from their journey. This feels like someone else's life, she said quietly. This morning, I was the disappointing daughter putting on a wedding dress that wasn't meant for me. Tonight I'm in a vampire king's bedroom, surrounded by immortals who paint forests from memory. She laughed, but it was shaky. I don't even know what's real anymore. Theron reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. She leaned into the touch, her eyes fluttering closed. This is real, he said softly. I am real. And everything I said to you tonight was true. You are mine, Zara Marlowe. And I will spend every day of this year proving to you that you deserve to be treasured. Her eyes opened, shining with emotions that made his cold heart ache. Why me? Eleanor's the beautiful one, the accomplished one. Eleanor's not here. You are. He stroked his thumbs across her cheekbones, marveling at the softness of her skin. And you are beautiful. Breathtakingly so. Your sister may have classical features, but you have life in your face, emotion, depth. I could look at you for 100 years and never grow tired of discovering new expressions. You're just saying that I am 800 years old, he interrupted gently. I have loved and lost more than you can imagine. I've had centuries to learn the difference between surface beauty and true radiance. And you, Zara, you radiate. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. Let me show you. Let me help you see yourself the way I see you. She trembled in his hold, caught between disbelief and desperate hope. I'm afraid, she admitted in a whisper. Of me? Of this? Of wanting this too much, of believing you and then... Her voice cracked. I've spent so long being not enough, I don't know how to be someone's everything. The confession broke something in Theron. He pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her, enfolding her in his strength. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his coat, and he felt wetness seeping through the fabric where her face pressed against him. You don't have to know, he murmured into her hair. You just have to be yourself. That's all I want, Zara. Just you, exactly as you are. The artist who sees beauty in darkness, the woman who chose to trust a monster rather than return to those who hurt her. The brave soul who walked away from everything she knew because she believed there had to be something better. She sobbed once, harsh and broken, and then the tears came in earnest. Theron held her through it all, letting her cry out the years of rejection and disappointment, the fresh wounds of her family's betrayal, the overwhelming strangeness of this new reality. He had no heartbeat to offer her comfort, but he had strength and presence and an absolute determination to keep her safe. Eventually, her tears slowed. She pulled back, wiping at her face with shaking hands, clearly embarrassed. I'm sorry. I'm not normally so emotional. You just survived your sister's wedding where you were offered as a replacement bride to a man who insulted you publicly, then got kidnapped by a vampire king who claims you belong to him based on a fictional debt, Theron said dryly. I think some emotion is justified. That startled a laugh out of her, watery but genuine. When you put it that way. Go clean up, he said gently, nodding toward the bathroom. Take as long as you need. I'll be in the study if you require anything. He paused, then added, The bed is yours. I don't sleep not in the way mortals do. You'll have complete privacy. Understanding flickered in her eyes, gratitude and perhaps a hint of disappointment, though she hid it quickly. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. Even if you did lie about the debt. For bringing me here. For giving me a choice. Always, he promised. You will always have a choice with me, Zara. He forced himself to step back, to turn away, to leave her alone despite every possessive instinct screaming at him to stay. But she needed space, needed time to process everything that had happened, and he needed to think, to plan how best to court a mortal woman who had been hurt too many times to trust easily. This was going to require strategy, patience, all the skills he'd honed over 8 centuries of navigating vampire politics and human wars. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Theron looked forward to the challenge. Because at the end of it, if he succeeded, Zara Marlowe would be his in truth, not through fictional debts or forced circumstances, but by her own free choice, and that would be worth any amount of effort. The study was smaller than the bedroom, but no less luxurious, lined floor to ceiling with books in dozens of languages. Theron settled into his favorite chair, a relic from 17th century France, and tried to focus on the report Seraphine had left for him. Border disputes with the werewolf territories, trade agreements with the witch covens, the endless minutiae of ruling a supernatural nation. But his attention kept drifting to the bedroom, to the sounds of water running as Zara cleaned up. His vampire hearing picked up every detail, her sighs, her movements, the rustle of fabric as she finally shed that ridiculous wedding dress. He tried not to listen, tried to give her privacy even in his own mind, but it was impossible. She was intoxicating, and every part of him was attuned to her presence. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, the bathroom door opened. Theron looked up to find Zara standing in the doorway, wrapped in one of his silk robes. It was far too large for her, the sleeves falling past her hands, the hem pooling on the floor. She had washed her face clean of makeup and taken down her elaborate hairstyle, letting her dark curls tumble freely around her shoulders. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "I couldn't find any clothes," she said apologetically, "and I can't put that dress back on. I think I might burn it." A perfectly reasonable response. Theron set aside his reports, giving her his full attention. "I'll have Seraphine arrange a wardrobe for you tomorrow. For tonight, you're welcome to anything in my closet, though I suspect it will all dwarf you." She smiled at that, a small but genuine curve of her lips. "The robe is comfortable. Thank you." She hesitated, then moved further into the study, her bare feet silent on the plush carpets. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why don't you sleep?" She settled onto the chair across from him, curling her legs under her. "Is that a vampire thing?" "We can enter a state of rest, something like sleep but not quite. It's not necessary every night, more of a recharging. Most vampires rest during the day when the sun makes us weak, but I've learned to go days without it." He watched her process this, saw the curiosity burning in her eyes. "You're handling all of this remarkably well." "Am I?" She laughed softly. "I feel like I'm barely holding it together, like at any moment I'll wake up in my old bedroom and realize this was all a stress-induced hallucination." "Would you want it to be?" The question hung between them. Zara considered it carefully, her gaze distant. "No," she said finally. "Even with how strange and frightening this all is, no. I've spent my whole life feeling trapped. Tonight, for the first time, I feel like I've escaped." "Tell me about your art," Theron said, changing the subject before the intensity between them became overwhelming. "What do you paint?" Her face lit up, and he felt satisfaction curl through him at her obvious passion. "Everything. Mostly landscapes and portraits. I love capturing emotion in faces, trying to show what people feel rather than just how they look. My parents hated it, said I should focus on still lifes and pretty scenes that would sell to their friends, but I wanted to paint truth, not decoration." "I want to see your work." She looked startled. "Really?" "Really. I told you I'm an artist myself. I understand the drive to create, to capture moments before they fade into time." He leaned forward, drawn to her enthusiasm like a moth to flame. "And I want to understand what you see when you look at the world. I don't have any of my paintings here," she said regretfully. "They're all at my parents' house, locked away in the attic because they embarrassed my mother." Anger flared through Theron, sharp and hot. "Then we'll retrieve them, tomorrow, if you'd like. Consider it your first official act as a guest of the Vampire King reclaiming what's yours." "You'd do that?" "Zara," he held her gaze, letting her see the truth of his conviction. "I would do anything for you. By this time tomorrow you'll have your paintings, a studio to work in, and every supply you could possibly need. You'll never have to hide your talent again." Tears shimmered in her eyes again, but this time they were mixed with joy. "I don't know what to say." Say you'll stay, he said quietly. Say you'll give us a real chance. She bit her lip, and he found himself mesmerized by the gesture, by the flash of white teeth against pink flesh. For a year, she said. I agreed to a year. For a year, he echoed, and then we'll see. They talked through the night, conversation flowing easily once the initial awkwardness faded. Zara asked questions about his long life, what he'd seen, where he'd traveled, how the world had changed over 8 centuries. Theron answered as honestly as he could, editing out the darkest parts but not hiding the truth of what he was. He'd killed, yes, fed on humans, though he was careful about it now, taking only what was offered or what could be spared. He'd fought in wars both human and supernatural, accumulating scars that only silver could leave on immortal flesh. In return, she told him about growing up in her sister's shadow, about the slow erosion of her self-worth as her parents made clear which daughter they valued, about discovering art as a refuge, a way to express everything she couldn't say aloud, about the dreams she'd had before they were dismissed as childish and impractical. I wanted to travel, she confessed as the hours wore on. See the places I'd only read about in books, Paris, Rome, Tokyo, paint them at different times of day, capture the light the way the masters did. But my parents said it was frivolous, that I should focus on finding a husband, securing the family's social position. Then we'll go, Theron said simply. All of those places and more. I have properties all over the world and 800 years of travel experience. Consider me your personal tour guide. She stared at him. You're serious. Completely. What's the point of immortality if not to share it with someone who appreciates beauty? He smiled at her expression of wonder. Besides, I haven't been to Paris in decades. It will be good to see how it's changed. This is insane, she murmured, but she was smiling now, truly smiling. Yesterday I thought my life was over. Today I'm planning a European tour with a vampire king. Is that a yes? Yes. The word came out breathless, full of hope and fear and desperate excitement. Yes, I want to see everything. I want to paint it all. She broke off, shaking her head. I want to be the person I never got to be. Then be her, Theron said fiercely. Starting now. No more hiding, no more making yourself small. You're in my world now, Zara, and here you can be as large and bright and magnificent as you truly are. Dawn was approaching. He could feel it in his bones, the way all vampires could. The sun was still an hour away, but he needed to ensure Zara was settled before the day's weakness claimed him. He stood, offering her his hand. You should rest. Mortal bodies need sleep, even if vampire ones don't. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet, but instead of moving toward the bedroom, she swayed closer, looking up at him with an expression that made his breath catch. Theron? Yes? Thank you. For tonight. For seeing me when no one else ever has. She rose on her toes, and before he could process what was happening, she pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Good night. The touch of her lips against his skin burned like fire, like sunlight, like everything he'd thought he'd lost when he became a monster. Theron stood frozen as she pulled away, as she walked back to the bedroom with a shy smile over her shoulder, as the door closed quietly behind her. He lifted one hand to his cheek, touching the place where her lips had been, and felt something crack in the walls he'd built around his heart 800 years ago. This woman was going to destroy him, and he was going to let her. The next evening, Theron woke to find Zara curled up in his study's chair, sketching in a notebook Seraphine must have provided. She was still wearing his robe, her hair a wild tangle, completely absorbed in her work. He watched her for a long moment, drinking in the sight of her in his space, surrounded by his things as if she belonged there. She looked up and caught him staring. A blush spread across her cheeks. Hi. Sorry, I didn't mean to invade your space. Seraphine brought me some supplies this morning, and I got carried away. Never apologize for creating art. He moved to stand behind her, looking down at the sketch. It was a portrait of one of the vampires from last night, a young-looking male named Lucian, rendered in quick, confident strokes that somehow captured not just his features, but his essence. The loneliness in his eyes, the weariness of immortality. This is remarkable. You think so? She studied her own work critically. I feel like I didn't quite get his expression right. There was something in the way he looked at the other vampires, like he was searching for connection, but afraid to find it. You got it exactly right. Theron was amazed at her perception, at how she'd seen through to the heart of Lucian's struggle after just one meeting. You have a gift, Zara. A real one. She ducked her head, pleased but embarrassed. My art teacher in college said I had potential, but my parents pulled me out after the first year, said it was a waste of money. More anger on her behalf. Theron made a mental note to ensure her parents understood exactly what they'd lost when they pushed her away. But that was for later. Right now, he had a promise to keep. Get dressed, he said. Seraphine left clothes in the bedroom. We're going to get your paintings. Zara's eyes widened. Right now? Right now. While your parents are likely still dealing with the fallout from yesterday, they'll be too distracted to put up much resistance. He smiled, letting a hint of fang show. And I'm very persuasive when I need to be. She jumped up, excitement overriding her nervousness. Give me 5 minutes. It took her 10, but Theron didn't mind. When she emerged, she was dressed in dark jeans and a deep green sweater that brought out the warmth in her eyes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the terrified bride from yesterday, and everything like the woman she was meant to be: confident, curious, alive. Ready? He asked. She took his offered hand. Ready. The Marlowe estate was in chaos when they arrived. Theron could hear the shouting from 3 blocks away, his preternatural senses picking up every angry word, every accusation being hurled back and forth. He felt Zara tense beside him as they approached the front door. They're fighting about what happened, she said quietly. About Eleanor running away, about the scandal, about me. I can tell from my father's voice he's absolutely furious. Good, Theron said coldly. Let him be furious. He doesn't get to dictate your life anymore. He knocked on the door with enough force to rattle it in its frame. The shouting inside cut off abruptly. Footsteps approached, and then Zara's father yanked the door open, his face purple with rage. You, he spat, his eyes fixing on Theron. Then he saw Zara, and his expression shifted to something uglier. And you! How dare you come back here after the embarrassment you caused? Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Hello, father, Zara said, her voice remarkably steady despite the way her hand trembled in Theron's. I came to collect my belongings. Your belongings? You have no belongings. Everything in this house belongs to this family, and you forfeited any claim when you left with this creature. Theron felt his control slipping. Red crept into the edges of his vision, the predator rising in response to the threat against his chosen one. He stepped forward, and Zara's father stumbled back instinctively, his body recognizing the danger, even if his pride didn't. You will speak to her with respect, Theron said softly. His voice didn't rise, but power thrummed through it, ancient and absolute. She is under my protection. Any insult to her is an insult to me, and I promise you, Mr. Marlowe, you do not want to insult me. The color drained from the man's face. Behind him, Zara's mother appeared, clutching a handkerchief and looking like she hadn't slept. Please, she said, her voice trembling, please just leave us alone. Haven't you done enough? I haven't done anything, Theron replied, though he gentled his tone slightly for Zara's sake. Your daughter made a choice. I'm simply here to help her collect what's hers, her paintings, her art supplies, anything she wishes to take. The paintings are ours, Mr. Marlowe blustered, recovering some of his bluster. She created them in our house using materials we paid for. That's not how art works, and you know it, Zara interrupted, anger finally breaking through her calm facade. Those paintings are mine. I made them. They're the only things I have that are truly mine, and I'm not leaving without them. Her father opened his mouth to argue, but Theron had heard enough. He released Zara's hand and moved, blurring past the humans faster than they could track. In seconds, he'd located the attic entrance and the locked door that kept Zara's work prisoner. The lock was nothing to his strength. He tore it off and pushed the door open, revealing a space packed with canvases. There had to be hundreds of them. Paintings stacked against every wall, sorted by size, covered in dust from months or years of neglect. Theron felt rage build in his chest as he took in the evidence of Zara's talent, of all the work her family had hidden away like it was shameful. Zara appeared behind him, having followed at human speed. She made a small, wounded sound when she saw the sheer number of paintings. I forgot how many there were. I've been painting since I was 12, and they just kept storing them up here, telling me I should stop wasting my time. We're taking all of them, Theron declared. He turned to face the parents who'd followed them up. Every single painting, every sketchbook, every supply. And you're not going to stop us. Because if you try, I will ensure that every prominent family in this city knows exactly what you did, how you tried to force the wrong daughter into a marriage, how you committed fraud against one of the most powerful families in the region, how you destroyed your own child's confidence for years. You can't prove any of that, Mr. Marlowe blustered, but he looked sick now. I don't have to prove it. I just have to say it. And people believe vampires, Mr. Marlowe. We've had centuries to establish our credibility. Theron's smile was all teeth. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to help us load these paintings into the car I've arranged. You're going to give Zara anything else she wants from her room. And then you're going to leave her alone. Forever. No attempts to contact her, no demands she return, no using family pressure or guilt to manipulate her. She's done with you. The parents looked at their daughter, perhaps hoping she'd argue, that she'd show some loyalty to family. But Zara just stared back at them, her expression closed and cold. Zara, honey, her mother tried. Please, we only ever wanted what was best for you. No, you didn't. Zara's voice was flat. You wanted what was easiest for you. What made you look good to your friends. You never once asked what I wanted, what I needed, who I wanted to be. Eleanor figured that out and she ran. I should have run too, years ago. We gave you everything, her father shouted. A home, an education, a chance to marry well. You gave me nothing that mattered, Zara said. And there were tears on her cheeks now, but her voice didn't waver. And I'm done trying to earn your love. I'm done being not enough. I choose him. She moved to stand beside Theron, taking his hand again. I choose the vampire king who sees me, who values my art, who's shown me more respect in one day than you have in my entire life. The silence that followed was deafening. Theron watched emotions flicker across the parents' faces, shock, hurt, denial, rage. But underneath it all, he saw the truth. They knew she was right. They'd failed her, and now they were losing her, and they couldn't quite believe it was really happening. Fine, Mr. Marlowe finally bit out. Take the paintings, take whatever you want, but don't come crying back to us when you realize what a mistake you've made. I won't, Zara promised. She squeezed Theron's hand. Can you call your people? I want to leave as soon as possible. Theron had already sent a mental summons to Seraphine and several other vampires. They arrived within minutes, moving through the house with supernatural efficiency, carefully packing each painting and transporting them to the fleet of vehicles waiting outside. Zara went to her childhood bedroom and emerged with a single suitcase clothes, a few books, a stuffed animal that looked well-loved. That's everything, she said, her voice thick with emotions. That's all I want from this place. They left the Marlowe estate without looking back. Theron kept his arm around Zara's shoulders, feeling the tremors running through her, the aftermath of adrenaline and confrontation. She held herself together until they were back in his car, and then she broke, sobbing against his chest as everything caught up with her. I did it, she gasped between tears. I actually stood up to them. I left. You did, Theron confirmed, running his hands soothingly along her back. I'm so proud of you. I feel awful. I feel free. I feel terrified. She laughed wetly. I feel everything at once. That's normal. You just severed ties with your family. That's never easy, even when it's necessary. He tilted her face up, wiping tears away with his thumbs. But you have a new family now, if you want it. The vampire court. Seraphine. Me. We take care of our own, Zara, and you're one of us now. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there seemed to settle something in her. Take me home, she said. To your home, our home, whatever. I want to go where I'm wanted. Always, Theron promised. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste and gentle despite the hunger thrumming through him. You'll always be wanted with me. The next weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. True to his word, Theron set up a studio for Zara in his underground estate, a vast room with perfect lighting simulation, walls she could paint on if she chose, and enough supplies to last a lifetime. She threw herself into her art with renewed passion, creating at a pace that amazed even her. The vampire court fell in love with her. She painted portraits of them, capturing their unique personalities, the weight of their immortality. She asked questions constantly, fascinated by their histories, their perspectives. She treated them not as monsters, but as people, and they responded by treating her like precious treasure. Seraphine appointed herself Zara's guide and guard, teaching her about vampire politics, the rules that governed their world, the dangers she needed to avoid. A fast friendship developed between them, built on mutual respect and shared dry humor. And through it all, Theron courted her. He took her to museums at midnight, bribing the guards for private tours so she could see masterpieces up close. He showed her his own paintings, centuries of work stored in climate-controlled vaults, and listened as she analyzed each one with her artist's eye. They talked until dawn most nights, about art and philosophy and the nature of immortality, about her dreams and his regrets and everything in between. He bought her clothes that made her feel beautiful, jewelry that caught her eye in shop windows, books she mentioned wanting to read. He arranged for famous artists to visit, giving her access to teachers who could help her refine her already considerable skill. He commissioned a show of her work in one of the city's most prestigious galleries, using his influence to ensure the right people attended. And he touched her constantly casual brushes of his hand against hers, his arm around her waist as they walked through his halls, his fingers threading through her hair when they talked, never demanding more, never pushing past her boundaries, but making his desire clear through every gentle contact. Zara bloomed under his attention. The nervous, diminished woman from the wedding disappeared, replaced by someone confident and vibrant. She laughed more, smiled more, spoke her mind without hesitation. She was becoming who she was always meant to be, and Theron fell deeper in love with her every single day. It terrified him. 800 years of careful control, of maintaining distance from mortals, of protecting his heart from the inevitable pain of loss, all of it crumbling in the face of one human woman with paint-stained fingers and eyes that saw too much. He tried to hide it, tried to maintain the pretense that this was just a year-long arrangement, that he'd let her go when the time came as promised. But Seraphine saw through him immediately. "You're going to offer to turn her," she said one evening, cornering him in his study while Zara worked in her studio. "Aren't you?" Theron didn't bother denying it. "Eventually. If she wants it, I won't force her, but—" He broke off, staring at his hands. "I can't watch her age and die, Seraphine. I can't lose her to time. It would destroy me. You've only known her for 2 months. I've known her for 2 months, and I'm certain I want to spend eternity with her. How's that possible?" He looked at his oldest friend helplessly. "How did she become everything so quickly?" Seraphine's expression softened. "Because you were ready to love someone again. You've been alone for so long, keeping everyone at arm's length. And then she appeared brave and broken and perfect for you. Of course you fell. What if she says no? What if at the end of the year she wants to leave? Then you let her go, as you promised." Seraphine gripped his shoulder. "But Theron, she looks at you the same way you look at her, like you hung the moon. I don't think you need to worry about her leaving." Hope flared in his chest, dangerous and bright. "Do you really think—" "I think she's falling in love with you," Seraphine said gently, "and I think you need to tell her how you feel before you lose your nerve." But Theron didn't get the chance that night, because just after midnight, alarms rang through the estate. The warning system triggered, signaling intruders in the tunnels leading to their domain. Theron was on his feet instantly, his fangs extending, predatory instincts surging to the forefront. Seraphine was already moving, barking orders through the mental link that connected the vampire court. Within seconds, warriors assembled in the great hall, armed and ready. "What's happening?" Zara appeared from her studio, eyes wide with fear. She looked at Theron in his battle-ready state, fangs bared, eyes glowing red, every inch of him screaming danger, and didn't flinch. "Are we under attack? Someone has breached the outer defenses." Theron forced himself to gentle his voice, to control the bloodlust singing through his veins. "Zara, I need you to go to my chambers. Seraphine will ward the doors. No one will be able to get through. You'll be safe there." "But what about you?" "I'm the king. I need to defend my people." He cupped her face, memorizing her features in case something went wrong. "Please, I can't fight properly if I'm worried about you." She grabbed his wrists, holding on tight. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," he said, and kissed her. It was supposed to be quick, just a reassurance. But the moment their lips met, everything else fell away. She opened for him immediately, her fingers sliding into his hair, her body pressing against his. He tasted her sweetness and heat and life, and felt something click into place in his soul. This was his. She was his, and he would destroy anyone who threatened her. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Zara's lips were swollen, her eyes dark with desire and fear. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Always," he promised again. Then he handed her off to Seraphine and led his warriors into the tunnels. The battle was brief but brutal. A group of vampire hunters had somehow learned the location of the king's court and decided to make their reputation by attacking. They were well armed with silver weapons and UV grenades, equipped with enough firepower to take down lesser vampires. But they weren't facing lesser vampires. They were facing Theron Ravencourt and his most elite warriors, ancient creatures who had survived centuries of warfare. The hunters never stood a chance. Theron moved through them like death itself, his speed and strength overwhelming their technology. He avoided killing when possible. Capture and interrogation would tell them who had leaked their location. But when one hunter aimed a flamethrower at the tunnel leading to his private chambers, to where Zara waited, something snapped in Theron's control. The hunter died before he could register movement. Theron stood over the body, blood on his hands, rage thundering through him. How dare they? How dare anyone threaten what was his? The remaining hunters surrendered quickly after that. By the time Theron made it back to his chambers, dawn was approaching and he was covered in blood and ash. He felt the day's weakness pulling at him, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was seeing Zara, confirming she was safe, holding her and never letting go. She was pacing when he entered, still dressed in her paint-splattered clothes from earlier, her face pale with worry. When she saw him, relief flooded her features. "Theron, thank God, are you hurt?" "Nothing serious. It's mostly not my blood." He looked down at himself ruefully. "I'm a mess." "I don't care." She crossed the room and threw herself into his arms, apparently unconcerned about the gore. "I was so scared. I heard fighting, heard screaming, and I couldn't do anything but wait and hope. Shh, I'm here. I'm fine." He held her tight, burying his face in her hair, letting her scent wash away the stench of battle. "It's over. The hunters are captured or dead. We're safe." She pulled back enough to look at his face, and he saw tears streaking her cheeks. "I thought I might lose you. I thought we haven't even had time yet. It's not enough time. It's not—" He kissed her again, swallowing her words, pouring 800 years of loneliness and 2 months of desperate love into the contact. She kissed back frantically, her hands fisting in his ruined coat, pulling him closer as if she could merge them into one being. "Zara," he breathed against her lips. "Zara, I love you. I'm in love with you. I have been since the moment I saw you beneath that veil, and every day since has only made it stronger. You are everything, everything I didn't know I was missing. And I know it's too soon. I know you might not feel the same, but I need you to know. I love you." "It's not too soon," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you too. I've been falling in love with you since you held me while I cried, since you claimed me in front of everyone, since you showed me I was worth cherishing. I love you, Theron. I love you so much." Joy exploded through him, pure and perfect. He lifted her easily, carrying her toward the bathroom. "Let me clean up. Then we're going to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" He set her on the bathroom counter, turning on the shower to let the water heat. "I mean, the year isn't even half over, and I'm already certain I want forever with you. I mean, I need to know if you'd ever consider—" He broke off, suddenly uncertain. "If you'd ever want to become like me, a vampire, immortal." Zara went very still. He could see her processing the offer, weighing it against everything she knew about his world. "Would it change who I am?" she asked finally. "Would I still be able to paint? To feel things the way I do now?" "You'd still be you, just stronger, faster, with senses heightened beyond anything you can imagine. You'd be able to see colors mortals can't perceive, hear music in ways that would make you weep. And yes, you could still create art. Some of our greatest artists are vampires." He took her hands, desperate for her to understand. "But it's not a decision to make lightly. You'd be giving up the sun, giving up mortality, joining a world that's darker and more dangerous than anything you've known. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe you were strong enough to handle it, but I also won't pressure you. If you want your mortal life, if you want to experience humanity fully and then let go, I'll treasure whatever time we have, even if it breaks me." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she said, "Can I think about it? It's a huge decision, and I want to be sure." "Of course. Take all the time you need." He kissed her forehead. "The offer stands for whenever you're ready, or never if that's what you choose. Either way, I'm yours for as long as you'll have me." She smiled at that, soft and wondering. Forever might not be long enough. "Then we'll make forever work." He cleaned up quickly, washing away the evidence of battle, changing into soft sleep clothes, despite the fact that he didn't technically need them. When he emerged, Zara was already in his bed, the covers pulled up to her chin, waiting for him. "Will you rest with me?" she asked. "Just for today? I know you don't sleep, but—" "I'll rest," he promised. He slid into the bed beside her, gathering her against his chest. She fit perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, her warmth seeping into his cold skin. "I'll always rest if it's with you." She was asleep within minutes, exhausted from the stress and fear of the night. Theron held her and let himself slip into the meditative state that passed for vampire sleep, their heartbeats syncing hers strong and steady, his slow and faint but present. This, he thought, as consciousness faded. This was what he'd been missing for 8 centuries. Not just companionship, not just someone to pass the time with, but this love so deep it ached, trust so complete he could lower all his defenses, peace so profound the darkness didn't feel lonely anymore. He'd found his mate, his partner, his everything, and he would spend however long she gave him proving that she'd made the right choice. The weeks that followed the attack were tense as Theron worked to identify how the hunters had found them. The captured enemies were interrogated carefully, their minds combed for information with the help of the court's telepaths. What they discovered was troubling. Someone within the supernatural community had leaked the location, a traitor selling secrets to hunters for profit. It took 3 weeks to track down the culprit, a young vampire who'd accumulated gambling debts he couldn't pay. Theron dealt with him swiftly and publicly, making an example that would discourage future betrayals. It was harsh, necessary work that reminded him of the darker aspects of being king. But Zara surprised him by understanding. "You're not just ruling people," she said when he confessed his guilt over the execution. "You're protecting them. Sometimes that means making hard choices." She held his hand, her thumb stroking over his knuckles. "I don't like violence, but I understand why it was necessary, and I don't think less of you for it." Her acceptance of both his light and darkness meant everything. She'd seen him at his most monstrous, blood-soaked, and battle-ready, executing a traitor, navigating the brutal politics of vampire society, and she hadn't flinched. She loved all of him, not just the parts that were easy. The gallery show of her work opened 6 weeks after she'd come to live with him. Theron had initially planned it as a surprise, but Seraphine had convinced him Zara deserved to be involved in the decisions. So together, they'd selected pieces, planned the layout, crafted an artist's statement that spoke to her journey from hidden creator to confident artist. The opening night was spectacular. The gallery was packed with humans and vampires, mixing freely, an unusual sight, but Theron's presence ensured everyone behaved. Zara's paintings lined the walls, her unique vision on full display, portraits that captured soul-deep truths, landscapes that made the familiar strange and beautiful, abstract pieces that seemed to pulse with emotion. Critics raved. Collectors bid against each other for pieces, and Zara stood in the center of it all, glowing with pride and joy, finally receiving the recognition she deserved. Theron watched her shine, his chest tight with emotions. She wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves, her hair swept up to reveal her neck. She was radiant, confident, completely in her element, and when she caught his eye across the gallery and smiled just for him, soft and intimate despite the crowd, he knew he was completely lost to her. "You did this," she said later, when the guests had finally departed and they were alone in the gallery, surrounded by her work. "You made this happen. You believed in me when no one else did." "I simply gave you the opportunity," Theron corrected, pulling her into his arms. "You did the rest. This is your talent, your hard work, your vision. I'm just fortunate enough to witness it." She stretched up to kiss him, sweet and lingering, They'd been physically intimate in small ways since the night of the attack kisses and touches, sleeping tangled together, but always stopping short of full consummation. Theron had been giving her time, making sure she was truly ready, but his control was wearing thin. Every touch of her lips, every brush of her body against his, stoked the fire until he was burning with need. "Take me home," Zara whispered against his mouth. I need." "What do you need?" He had to hear her say it, had to be certain. "You, all of you, no more waiting." Her eyes were dark with desire, her pulse jumping in her throat. "Make me yours, Theron, completely." His control snapped. He gathered her into his arms and ran, blurring through the city streets so fast the world became streaks of light and shadow. She laughed against his neck, thrilled by the speed, trusting him to keep her safe. They made it back to his chambers in record time. Theron set her down carefully, then took a moment to just look at her, flushed and disheveled and beautiful beyond words. "Are you absolutely certain?" he asked, even though his fangs were aching and his body was tight with want. "Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters." "I'm already yours," she said simply. "I have been since you lifted that veil and saw me, really saw me. Now I want you to claim what's yours." That was all the permission he needed. He kissed her deeply, walking her backward until her legs hit the bed. She fell onto the silk sheets with a gasp, and he followed her down, covering her body with his. Her hands were everywhere, sliding under his shirt, tracing the muscles of his back, threading through his hair. He nipped at her throat, careful of his fangs, and felt her arch into him. "Theron," she breathed, "please." He made love to her slowly, carefully, aware of his strength and her fragility. She was responsive and passionate, meeting him touch for touch, kiss for kiss. When he finally entered her, she cried out his name, and he felt something in him settle, like a piece he hadn't known was missing had clicked into place. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing patterns on her bare skin. "I love you," he murmured into her hair, "my Zara, my heart." "I love you too." She pressed a kiss over where his heart would beat if it could. "My vampire king." They stayed like that for hours, talking and touching and simply existing together. And when Zara finally drifted to sleep, Theron held her close and let himself imagine forever, centuries of nights like this, an eternity of loving her. He'd never been happier. The decision came 3 months after the wedding that wasn't. Zara woke one morning evening, by vampire standards, and found Theron watching her sleep as he often did. But this time there was something different in his expression. Expectation, maybe. Hope. "I want to be like you," she said without preamble. "I've been thinking about it for weeks, weighing everything, and I'm certain. I want forever with you, Theron. I want to see the world through vampire eyes. I want to create art for centuries, not decades. I want to be your partner in every way." She sat up, holding the sheet to her chest, meeting his gaze steadily. "Turn me, make me immortal, make me yours forever." For a moment, Theron just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she squeaked in protest. "Are you absolutely certain?" His voice was rough with emotion. "There's no going back from this. Once you're turned, you're a vampire forever." "I know, and I'm certain." She pulled back to cup his face. "I've never been more certain of anything. You're my home, Theron. Wherever you are, that's where I belong." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling, truly smiling, with more joy than she'd ever seen from him. "Then we'll do it properly. With the court as witnesses, according to all the ancient traditions. I want everyone to know you're choosing this, choosing us, choosing to be my queen." "Your queen?" Zara felt her eyes widen. "I thought I was just going to be your partner." "You'll be my mate, my equal, the vampire queen." He stroked her hair, his eyes soft. "Did you think I'd turn you and have you be anything less? You're already a queen in everything but name, Zara. The court loves you. My people respect you, and I worship you. This is just making it official." She felt tears prick her eyes. A queen? Me? The spare daughter who couldn't do anything right. The spare daughter who became extraordinary the moment she was free to be herself, Theron corrected. "Say yes, Zara. Be my queen. Rule at my side for eternity." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." The ceremony was held 3 nights later. The entire vampire court gathered in the great hall, dressed in their finest, to witness their king claim his mate. Zara wore a gown of deepest crimson, a symbolic choice the color of blood, of transformation, of the life she was leaving behind and the immortality she was embracing. Seraphine had explained the ritual to her carefully. Theron would drain her to the point of death, then feed her his own ancient blood. The transformation would take 3 days, during which she'd be unconscious, her body remaking itself cell by cell. When she woke, she'd be vampire pale and powerful and eternally beautiful. "It will hurt," Seraphine had warned. "The transformation is agony, but Theron will be there when you wake, and the pain will be worth it." Now, standing in front of the assembled court with Theron beside her, Zara felt no fear, only anticipation, only certainty that this was right. Theron addressed his people, his voice carrying through the vast hall. "For 800 years I have ruled alone. I have been king, warrior, and judge. I have led you through wars and peace, through the darkness and toward the light, but I have never been complete, not until her." He turned to Zara, taking her hands. "Zara Marlowe is mortal, but she has a heart that sees past monster to man. She has courage that puts warriors to shame. She has talent that will endure centuries. And she is chosen of her own free will, with full knowledge of what it means to join our world, to become immortal, to rule at my side." A cheer went up from the assembled vampires. Zara saw Seraphine smiling, tears of blood streaking her pale face, saw Lucian and the others nodding approval, saw a community accepting her, welcoming her as one of their own. "Do you, Zara Marlowe, consent to this transformation?" Theron asked formally. "Do you choose immortality, knowing all it entails? Do you choose to be vampire, to be queen, to be mine?" "I do," she said clearly. "I choose all of it. I choose you." "Then come." He pulled her closer, tilting her head to expose her throat. "Trust me one last time as a mortal. When you wake, you'll be so much more." She felt his fangs pierce her skin, and the world exploded into sensation. There was pain, yes, but also pleasure, a euphoria that built with each pull of blood from her veins. She felt herself weakening, felt her human life draining away, and wasn't afraid. Because Theron held her carefully, his arms steel around her, keeping her safe even as he brought her to the edge of death. When she was barely conscious, he bit his own wrist and brought it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "Drink and be reborn." She drank. His blood was rich and strange, tasting of copper and power, and something indefinably other. It burned going down, burned through her veins, set every nerve ending alight. She felt her heart stutter, felt her human body starting to shut down, felt the transformation beginning. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Theron's voice, soft and loving. "Sleep now, my queen. When you wake, we'll have forever." The 3 days of transformation were agony for Theron. Zara lay in his bed, pale as death, her body racked with occasional convulsions as it remade itself. He stayed at her side the entire time, monitoring every change, ready to intervene if something went wrong. Seraphine brought him reports of court business, but he couldn't focus on anything except the woman fighting for immortality. On the 3rd night, just after sunset, Zara's eyes opened. They glowed red for a moment, then faded to a warm amber, the color they'd be from now on, marking her as newly turned. She took a breath out of habit rather than necessity, and Theron saw awareness flood her features. "Theron?" Her voice was the same but richer, carrying subtle harmonics mortal throats couldn't produce. "I'm here." He gathered her into his arms, relief crashing through him. "You did it. You're a vampire. You're alive well, immortal. How do you feel?" She considered the question, taking stock of her transformed body. "Everything is so intense. I can hear so many things, the court moving below us, cars on the streets above, water running through pipes in the walls, and the colors." She looked around the room with wide eyes. "Everything is so much more vivid. How do you stand it?" "You'll learn to filter the input. It takes time, but it becomes natural." He helped her sit up slowly. "What else?" "I'm strong. I can feel it like there's power coiled in my muscles waiting to be used. And I'm thirsty." She touched her throat. "Is that the bloodthirst?" "Yes. We'll feed you soon fresh blood from willing donors. You'll need to learn control, but I'll teach you everything." He cupped her face, drinking in the sight of her transformed features. She was still Zara, still his, but now perfected, immortal and powerful and eternal. "You're magnificent," she smiled, and he saw fangs for the first time. "I'm a vampire. I'm actually a vampire, and I'm going to be with you forever." Wonder filled her expression. "We have forever, Theron." "We have forever," he confirmed. Then he kissed her, vampire to vampire, equal to equal. When they broke apart, he took her hand and pulled her to her feet. "Come. The court wants to see their new queen. Let's show them what you've become." They descended to the great hall, hand in hand. The entire court had assembled again, waiting to meet Zara's vampire self. When she appeared at the top of the stairs, a cheer went up loud and genuine, full of welcome and celebration. Theron led her to the twin thrones that had been prepared. His was ancient obsidian, hers newly carved from white marble veined with red, a symbol of her transformation from mortal to monster, from human to queen. She sat with natural grace as if she'd been born to rule, and the court bowed deeply. "I present Queen Zara," Theron announced, his voice ringing with pride. "My mate, my equal, your ruler alongside me. Honor her as you honor me." "Queen Zara," the court repeated in unison. "Long may she reign." Seraphine approached first, dropping to one knee before the new queen. "My lady, it is an honor to serve you. If you need anything, guidance, friendship, someone to complain about the king's stubbornness, I am here." Zara laughed, the sound brighter and more musical than it had been as a mortal. "Thank you, Seraphine, for everything. You've been such a good friend. And will continue to be, for centuries to come." Seraphine rose and embraced her carefully. "Welcome to immortality, my queen." Others came forward to offer congratulations and fealty. Zara handled each interaction with poise, already adapting to her new status and abilities. Theron watched her shine, his chest tight with love and pride. She was born for this, to be queen, to be vampire, to stand beside him as they ruled their people. The celebration went late into the night. There was blood wine and music, dancing and laughter. Zara fed for the first time under Seraphine's careful supervision, learning to take only what was needed, to seal the wound afterward with vampire magic, to read the subtle cues that indicated a donor had given enough. She was a natural at it, controlled and careful despite her newborn hunger. And when the party finally wound down and they returned to their chambers, Theron made love to his vampire queen properly, both of them immortal now, strong enough to truly let go. It was transcendent, a connection that went beyond physical pleasure into something spiritual. When they finally collapsed together, satisfied and content, Zara laughed with pure joy. "This is my life now," she said wonderingly. "Forever with you, creating art, ruling a kingdom, being part of something bigger than myself. It's everything I never knew I wanted." "It's everything I never thought I could have," Theron admitted. "For 8 centuries, I was alone. And now you're here, and suddenly eternity doesn't feel long enough. Then we'll just have to make the most of every moment." She kissed him softly. "I love you, my king. I love you, my queen." They stayed tangled together as dawn approached, talking about all the things they'd do with their forever. The places they'd travel: Paris first, as he'd promised, then Rome and Tokyo and everywhere else she wanted to see. The art she'd create, centuries of work, evolving and growing as her immortal perspective deepened. The children they might adopt someday, choosing to raise young vampires who needed guidance and love. The court they'd rule with wisdom and compassion, ensuring their people thrived in the modern world. And through it all, the love between them fierce and eternal, forged in the space between one heartbeat and the next, when a vampire king had looked at the wrong sister beneath a veil and known she was right in every way that mattered. Zara's first weeks as a vampire were filled with learning. She trained with the court's warriors, learning to control her new strength and speed. She studied vampire law and politics with Seraphine, understanding the complex web of alliances and treaties that kept their world stable. She hunted with Theron, learning to sense prey and take blood without causing harm. And she painted, oh, how she painted. Her art transformed along with her body. The The colors she could now perceive translated into canvases that seemed to glow with inner light. Her speed meant she could capture moments with perfect accuracy. Her enhanced vision revealed details mortals couldn't see. Each piece was a masterpiece, evidence of talent refined by immortality. A month after her transformation, Zara's second gallery show opened, this time featuring work created as a vampire. The art world went wild. Critics couldn't explain the luminous quality of her paintings, the way they seemed almost alive. Collectors fought to own them, and Zara stood in the center of the storm, calm and confident, finally receiving all the recognition she'd been denied for so long. Her parents tried to contact her after seeing news of her success. Theron intercepted the letters and calls, offering to let Zara decide whether she wanted to respond. She thought about it for a long time before writing a single sentence and having it delivered. "I'm happy without you. Don't contact me again." It was closure. Final and clean, with no room for manipulation or guilt. She was done with that part of her life. Eleanor, surprisingly, reached out on her own. Zara's sister had fled to Europe after abandoning the wedding, and she sent an email apologizing for leaving Zara to clean up her mess. Zara responded with forgiveness and an offer to meet if Eleanor ever returned to the States. They might never be close, but there was no reason to carry that grudge either. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Theron and Zara stood on a balcony overlooking Paris. The Eiffel Tower glittered in the distance, its lights reflecting off the Seine. They'd spent the evening at the Louvre. Theron had arranged a private tour, naturally, and now stood in the cool night air, vampires unbothered by the winter chill. "Thank you," Zara said quietly, "for all of this. For saving me that night, for showing me what my life could be, for loving me." "Thank you for choosing me," Theron replied. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "For seeing past the monster to the man, for being brave enough to trust when you had every reason not to, for becoming my partner in every way." She turned in his arms, looking up at him with amber eyes that glowed softly in the darkness. "Do you ever regret it? Crashing the wedding, inventing that debt, stealing the wrong sister?" "Never," he said it with absolute conviction. "You were never the wrong sister, Zara. You were always exactly right. Fate put you under that veil at precisely the moment I needed to find you, and I will spend the rest of eternity being grateful for it." "Forever," she murmured, like she was testing the word. "We really have forever. We really do." He kissed her softly, tenderly, putting 800 years of loneliness and 6 months of joy into the contact. "And I plan to spend every moment of it showing you exactly how extraordinary you are." She smiled against his lips. "Every moment? That's a lot of time, Vampire King. And you're worth every single second, Vampire Queen." They stayed on that balcony until dawn forced them inside, talking about their future, making plans for the centuries ahead. And as they watched the sun start to rise, something they could only see for a few seconds before the light became too intense, Zara realized she'd never been happier. She'd been rescued by a vampire king from a life that would have destroyed her slowly. She'd found love and purpose and a place where she belonged. She'd discovered strength she never knew she had and built a future brighter than any she'd imagined, all because the wrong sister stood beneath that veil. And the Vampire King noticed the moment she lifted it. Years passed decades, then a century. Theron and Zara ruled their court with wisdom and compassion, modernizing vampire society while honoring its ancient traditions. They traveled the world together, painting and experiencing everything immortality had to offer. They weathered challenges and conflicts, always emerging stronger and more united. And through it all, their love never wavered. If anything, it grew deeper with each passing year, enriched by shared experiences and mutual growth. They were partners in every sense, lovers and friends, king and queen, two souls who had found each other across the impossible divide between mortal and monster. On the 100th anniversary of the wedding that wasn't, they returned to the cathedral where it had all begun. It was abandoned now, scheduled for demolition, but Theron had purchased it and was having it converted into an art museum, the Zara Marlowe Foundation, dedicated to supporting artists whose talent had been overlooked or dismissed. They stood in the same spot where she'd lifted her veil, and their eyes had met for the first time. The building was empty, quiet, full of memories. "Do you remember?" Theron asked softly. Every second, Zara took his hand, threading their fingers together. I was so scared, so humiliated. And then I looked up and saw you in the shadows, and something in me just knew. This was my chance, my escape, my future. I knew too. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. One look at you and 800 years of loneliness ended, just like that. One moment of perfect recognition. The wrong sister, she said with a laugh. The right woman, he corrected. Always the right woman. Exactly who I was meant to find. They kissed there in the abandoned cathedral, Vampire King and Vampire Queen, two immortals who had found forever in the space between one heartbeat and the next. And if anyone had been watching, they would have seen something miraculous, two creatures of darkness creating their own light, proving that even monsters could find redemption in love. Because sometimes the wrong sister is actually the right choice. Sometimes a fictional debt leads to a real future. Sometimes the person you weren't expecting is exactly who you need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a vampire king crashes a wedding and steals you away into a life more extraordinary than any fairy tale. Zara and Theron left the cathedral hand in hand, walking out into a world they'd helped shape toward a future they'd build together. They had forever stretching before them endless nights of love and art, of growth and discovery, of partnership and passion. It was everything neither of them had dared to hope for. And it had all begun the moment the wrong sister stood beneath the veil, and the vampire king noticed the moment she lifted it. The end came with a beginning, as all the best stories do. But this wasn't an ending at all, just the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Because for immortals, every ending is also a continuation. Every goodbye contains a promise to meet again. And every love story, once begun, echoes through eternity. Theron and Zara's story would continue for centuries more. They would face challenges and celebrate triumphs. They would watch the world change around them while remaining constant to each other. They would create beauty in art, in governance, in the love they shared and the lives they touched. But the heart of their story, the core truth that sustained them through everything, was simple. They had chosen each other, not because of fate or debt or supernatural destiny, but because when given the choice between safety and possibility, between the known and the unknown, between settling and soaring, they had both chosen love. And that choice, made freely and kept faithfully, was worth more than all the immortality in the world. In the end, it didn't matter that she'd been the spare daughter, the overlooked sister, the replacement bride. It didn't matter that he'd been a monster in the shadows, a predator masquerading as a man, a king who'd forgotten how to hope. What mattered was that they'd found each other, that they'd been brave enough to trust, that they'd built something beautiful from broken pieces and called it forever. The wrong sister stood beneath the veil, and the vampire king noticed, and everything changed, forever.